That's right. Do not adjust your radio dials. Do not lose your minds. Don't you dare accuse the Illuminati of lying right to your face. It is really the 6-8 with DJ Eclectic here on WQBR Eagle Radio. I'm your host, Christopher Haig. Thank you for tuning in and listening, despite the fact that this is the first show in a month. Yep, I'm back. This is actually my final show. We're right in wrapping up exam weeks here at Eastern Michigan University. I actually move out tomorrow at 3:30. I'm out of here. But I couldn't just leave you guys hanging. I had to come back for one last show. So here I am. Alright, so yeah, I haven't had a show in a month. For those of you who aren't connected with me on social media, as I did keep that portion of my audience fairly updated. Earlier this month, there was an incident at the station. Some equipment was tampered with, and our station manager shut down all Eagle Radio content. At first, it was permanent. It was going to be the end of the season. There, the second week of the month. But after the all-hands meeting on the 18th, she gave the okay for the last week of content. The person who tampered with the equipment still hasn't been publicly named, so I don't know who did it. I'm not even sure if our station manager, Megan, knows who did it. But at the all-hands meeting, she did say, we're allowed to have one last show, and I knew I couldn't leave you guys hanging without some closure and a final act. So yeah, one last show. This will be the end of the season, and I won't be back on air until next January. But don't worry. There is a Facebook page by the name DJ Eclectic. There is a Twitter profile by the same name, and the archive will be up on Vimeo.com. It's the only video hosting service that I could find that would work with a 2-hour-long radio show that is half music. Obviously, you can't go to YouTube with their copyright issues. So, you're not completely losing out. You can listen back to all of the shows in the archive on Vimeo, and if you like the page on Facebook and follow the Twitter profile, I will not only be updating you with new music and interesting stories that would normally make it onto the show, but I may every once in a while do more of a podcast version of the show. It wouldn't be live on air. It would be posted to the Vimeo account for the show in a different playlist. So, in the off season, you can still get your DJ Eclectic fix. And I thank all of you for listening and allowing me to actually say that. It's absolutely insane. All right, we're going to take our first break here. When we come back, we're going to get into the major change that's coming to the $20 bill. A former WWF wrestler who has now passed away, and a 30-year-old Windsor High School basketball player. Yes, really. And our first check of WQBR weather. You're listening to the 6-8 with DJ Eclectic. Here is A Race Replaced by the Foo Fighters. There you go. That was Voodoo by Godsmack. Before that was Stevie Wonder's I Wish. It is currently 6:18 here on this Sunday, the 24th of April. You're listening to the 6-8 with DJ Eclectic here on WQBR Eagle Radio. I'm your host, Christopher Haig. Thank you for tuning in and listening. All right, jumping right into this, and I'm sure a lot of you, if not all of you, have heard about the changes coming to the $20 bill. Harriet Tubman is going to replace President Andrew Jackson on the front of the bill. This comes after the Treasury Department abandoned a previous plan to have Hamilton replaced on the $10 bill. And I've seen this issue split. Actually, a lot of people I know. Not everybody is on the same page, but a lot of the negative. I don't want to say negative. The people who don't support this think that it's more important to. The face on the bill isn't as important as people would like us to think. And I'm not sure which side of the fence I'm on about this, but a lot of the combative opinions towards this are that we don't need to be focusing on who is on the money. What we need to be focusing on is getting rid of the money we owe and getting enough money to everybody for them to live. And I can 100% see that opinion. All of that makes sense. I've not seen a debate about this topic, even from way back before this was official, back in November, I think it was. Even then, like I've not seen an argument about this that doesn't make sense. It was very surprising, kind of refreshing. But like I said, this has split a lot of people. Harriet Tubman, obviously the very famous abolitionist, she would become the first African American to appear on U.S. paper currency and the first woman in more than a century to do it. Like I said, Hamilton, the original plan to replace Hamilton on the $10 bill got scrapped, and Treasury Secretary Jacob Luce said the reason for ditching the $10 and going to the $20 was fueled in part by the Broadway musical based on Hamilton's life, which I think is hysterical. A major change like this was determined by a musical, of all things. But yeah, a lot of the people who support this say that it's more getting Jackson off of the $20 bill because, he was such a prominent slave owner. And, it's pretty 50-50, get Jackson off of the bill and get somebody more fitting onto the bill. Another one of the more widely held opinions is that, even from when it was discussed getting Hamilton off of the $10 bill and replacing him with someone else, is that paper currency should be a place for the founding father types, the presidents who had a major decision in the growth of our country. And if you notice, there aren't very many super recent presidents on any sort of massively circulated currency. The kind of the one-offs, the non-presidents we've seen have been on the coins, Susan B. Anthony, and all of the, I don't want to call them novelty, but like almost the specialty coins, the $1 coins. A lot of people who are against this say that paper currency shouldn't be touched, but that acknowledging them on currency in general is, more than enough to honor what, insert important person's name here. Yeah, this is the $5, $10, and $20 bills will all be redesigned over the next 4 years, and they will be put into production at various times over the next decade. This is just the first one that's been announced. And, of course, it's not just normal people like you and I who have differing opinions. It also caught the eye of some well-known politicians. First off, Trump, obviously. If he has a chance to run his mouth, he's not going to leave the chance to run his mouth. And he came out and said that putting Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill is purely an example of political correctness. I'm sure, as most of you know, he is a very strong opponent, a very vocal opponent of the PC movement, which I'm with him on that front. I personally can't stand it. But to go out and say that, while what Tubman did in the years before the Civil War is, quote, fantastic, for him to say that, but then to also say, I'd love to leave Andrew Jackson on the 20. And he came up with the idea, maybe we do the $2 bill, or we do another bill, which, yeah, that's definitely an option we don't have. Let's just design and print more currency to, try and rebuild the economy that isn't going to get solved by making another bill for no reason. And Trump actually praised Jackson, telling USA Today, quote, or that he has, quote, been on the bill for many, many years and really represented somebody that really was very important to this country. Obviously, the man has a sparkling vocabulary. And it wasn't just Trump that came out and publicly had an opinion. And actually, Trump wasn't the only one to have his opinion. Ben Carson actually woke up enough to have an opinion on this and voiced kind of the same opinion that Trump did. Carson said that, while Tubman should be on currency and recognized in that way, he also said that Tubman should just be on the 2, or a different kind of currency, and to not make it one of the most widely circulated paper currency bills in the entire country. Carson said, quote, Andrew Jackson was the last president who actually balanced the federal budget where we had no national debt. In honor of that, we kick him off the money. And when he was asked, are you anti-Harriet Tubman? Carson responds, no, I love Harriet Tubman. I love what she did, but we can find another way to honor her. Maybe a $2 bill. So, I don't know. Interesting that Carson and Trump, a Trump who was very, very vocal against Carson. No, that's not really fair. He was vocal against everybody who wasn't Donald Trump. But it's interesting that they both have the same opinion. They aren't anti-Tubman. They're just anti-kicking Jackson off of the 20. They do both want to see Tubman on currency, even if it is something as small and really insignificant as the $2 bill, which I've not seen in years. That just tells you how important the $2 bill is. Like I said, I'm not officially on a specific side of the fence about this issue. I've not really read into it to form a personal opinion about it. I mean, I did kind of read into when the initial idea came up last year, or the year before that, and it was, take Hamilton off of the 10 and put Harriet Tubman on it. I did read into that, and I still wasn't really vocally or strongly for either side of the issue. I was really kind of neutral. I was more of the opinion of, let's worry about the way the money looks once we have money to admire. And that's not really a good idea or a bad idea. It was just a bad time for the idea. And I guess that's as on either side of the fence as I'm going to get about this issue. Because if I didn't have a strong opinion one way or the other before, I'm certainly not going to have one now. I do think it's good that we're recognizing more people who, maybe had more of a positive influence on the country as a whole. But let's save the idea for once we get rid of our $1 trillion of debt first. All right, on to some slightly sadder news. If any of you watched WWF back before it was WWE back in the 90s, you'll know the name Chyna. Chyna with a Y. She was with Triple H and Shawn Michaels as part of the stable D-Generation X. She was found unresponsive on Wednesday and was officially confirmed dead. At the time, her death was still under investigation, but there were no signs of foul play. Now it's starting to come out that that there's a high chance that it was an overdose, which wouldn't be too out of left field. Chyna did have issues with drugs and overdosing in the past, especially once she was unceremoniously removed from the company and never really welcomed back, never really mentioned, mostly because she moved on to the adult entertainment industry. But yeah, she was for the people who say wrestling is fake, while it may be staged, it does still hold an incredible impact. And while I didn't watch WWE until it was WWE in the mid-2000s, Chyna still had a tremendous impact. She was an amazing wrestler, an amazing performer. She was Professional Girl Wrestling Association's Rookie of the Year in '96, Ladies International Wrestling Association Rookie of the Year in '98. She held the WWF Intercontinental Championship twice. She was the first and only woman to hold that title. She was the WWF Women's Champion once, and it had been rumored before, but it's now been all but confirmed by Vince McMahon, again, because of her role in adult entertainment and how she was released from the company, that there were plans to make Chyna the WWF champion, which that was the company's big championship. That was it's the UFC World Heavyweight title for WWF. She was going to be the first, and to this day, the only woman to hold that title. There were plans, but it was scrapped, and off the top of my head, I don't know exactly why. Yeah, she was very, very unceremoniously removed from the company. She hasn't been mentioned in anything, even for the 1000th episode of Monday Night Raw, where all of the legends came back. There was no mention of Chyna. She hadn't received her Hall of Fame, not even consideration for a Hall of Fame nomination, which she absolutely deserves for the way she changed women's wrestling. And while it may be a bra and panty fest now, she really brought legitimacy to not only wrestling in general, but the women's division. Yeah, there are rumors that she still will not be getting a Hall of Fame nomination for much the same reasons I've listed before, which would be an absolute shame and beyond a misstep by McMahon and company. Yeah. Absolute innovator in the wrestling industry. She was 45 when she was found dead in Redondo Beach, California. All right, on to, I'm not sure if it's more positive, but definitely weirder news. This is coming out of Windsor. A high school basketball player was found to not be 17 like he said he was. He turned out to be 30. At the end of the basketball season, he was found to be 30 years old. Jonathan Nicola was the star center for Central Catholic in Windsor. And he is, he's an African native. He was a refugee who, on a student visa, came over and started, he was taken in by Pete Cusimano as part of the Canada Homestay program. and that's how he was able to live in the country on a student visa. And Pete Guzmano was the Central Catholic basketball coach. And there was it wasn't Pete Guzmano's idea, it was Nicholas. He, fudged the numbers as he came in. He came in as a 17-year-old. But Canada Border Services obtained evidence that shows that Nicola is actually 30 years old. He was a full 12 years older than the eldest competitors on most of the teams he played against. And I know that there are, several disorders that will make you age mentally faster than you age physically. So, and I had this opinion, maybe he actually looked 17. Maybe he was just aging, maybe his body wasn't keeping up with his mind in the aging process. No, he was 6'10", 202 pounds. He was saying he was a 17-year-old junior in high school. And he played for the entire season. The entire 2015-2016 season. Oddly enough, this was not the first time this has happened. In Texas, back in 2009, 21-year-old Haitian immigrant Gerdwich Montemir claimed to be a 17-year-old named Jerry Joseph, which that should tip you off right there. Never trust a person with two first names. He claimed to be a 17-year-old with a different name to maintain eligibility and compete in high school basketball. That was for Odessa Permian in Texas. He was later sentenced to 3 years in prison in connection with identity theft and sexual assault, the latter related to a relationship he developed with a 15-year-old student while on campus. Jonathan Nicola remains in custody at the Southwest Detention Center, awaiting further hearings on his immigration status. Suffice to say, he's going to need quite the miracle to stay in the country or move to any country anywhere else in general. I mean, okay, it's one thing for you to lie about your age. To leave your country, your home country, to find a better life somewhere else. A lot of people have done a lot of crazy things to find a better life, especially over here in North America. But to go to a high school to play basketball for an entire season at 6'10", like not even, maybe on the off chance, you do happen to look younger than you are. No, he came over and nobody... the most amazing thing is that nobody noticed. Nobody noticed until the end of the season. Not even the people he was playing against noticed. And of course, Canadian officials were unable to provide any specifics about this case due to privacy concerns. Windsor-Essex Catholic District School Board spokesman Stephen Fields insists that students within the district were never at risk due to a fellow student. That obviously, having a 30-year-old be around a bunch of, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And one of the big concerns was, was he... obviously this brings up a lot of questions of how did the locker room situation get handled? Was there really any threat of this 30-year-old dude doing anything to one of his 16 or 17-year-old classmates, his teammates? Mind-boggling stuff. I have no idea how he managed to go an entire season. I can't go 2 days pulling off anything like that. And before I opened my mouth to say anything, I couldn't get by 2 days pretending to be anything but a, second or third year college student. But yeah, Windsor High School basketball star found to be 30 years old instead of 17 like he said. Boggles my mind. Alright, before we take our second break here, we're going to get into the first look of WQBR weather. So far it's been pretty fair. We've had a decent enough amount of rain up here for it being, April. But, things have been starting to warm up. We've had a lot less cloud coverage. We've had a lot more sun. Breezes have been more cooling than freezing, which is nice. We're finally out of jacket season, which is amazing. Today reached a high of 65 with a low of 36 for tonight. Tomorrow we're looking at a 70% chance of rain, scattered thunderstorms around the area, high of 75 with a low of 50. Tuesday and Wednesday we're looking at mostly cloudy, highs in the upper 50s, lower 60s, low of 48 on Tuesday, low of 40 on Wednesday. Thursday, there's a 70% chance of light rain showers, high of 64, low of 43. Friday, mostly sunny, high of 65, low of 45, but I imagine it's going to feel a lot warmer than that. Saturday is going to be mostly cloudy, high of 68, low of 51. And Sunday, we get right back to the rain, 60% chance of thunder showers, high of 60, low of 46. So a pretty fair way to, kind of end April, get into May. Not super warm, which hopefully Mother Nature decides to save that for, mid to late July into August. But yeah, solid amount of rain for about half the week. But nothing too ridiculous, nothing too out of the ordinary for this time of year. In Michigan, of all places, so take my word with a grain of salt. There's no way to predict what weather's going to do here. Alright, we're going to take another break here. When we come back, what kind of restaurant is London hoping to open? Which religion has had its first official wedding ceremony? And what happened when Whole Foods was reported to have written a homophobic slur on one of its cakes for a gay pastor? All that, including a check of sports. When we come back, you're listening to The 6-8 with DJ Eclectic here on WQBR Eagle Radio. Here is a new one from Pentatonics. This is If I Ever Fall in Love, featuring Jason Derulo. There you go. That was Machine Head by Bush. Before that was Keep Singing by Rick Astley, a new single from his new album 50. Definitely go check him out if you're a fan of internet memes or great music in general. It was actually weird for me to think that Rick Astley is 50 years old. He's 50 and he sounds like that. Alright, jumping. Now, you guys know that I don't make up news on this show. Most of the time, because some of this news is just too bizarre to make up. Like this story out of London. There will be a restaurant opening. It's already announced it's opening. It's called the Bunyadi, Bunyadi. I say that so you guys can look it up if you don't believe me here. Almost 10,000 people have signed up to be on a waiting list for a restaurant that hasn't opened. Because the gimmick of this restaurant is that it allows you to be completely butt naked while you eat. The Bunyadi restaurant is intended to give an entirely natural eating experience where everything was fresh, free, and unadulterated from the trappings of modern life. This includes phones, electric lights, and even clothing. But don't worry if you're not quite okay with yourself or if you don't happen to be a nudist. There are specific sections where you can be clothed if you wish. It's set to open in June, and like I said, already has a waiting list of nearly 10,000 people. This is the newest idea from a company called Lollipop, where the people behind the Breaking Bad-inspired cocktail bar, ABQ. And the name of the restaurant, Bunyadi, actually means fundamental, base, or natural. Guests will enjoy wood flame grilled meals served on handmade clay crockery and edible cutlery. They will dine under a canopy of candle lights partitioned with bamboo and wicker. The founder of Lollipop, Seb Lial, which I'm really hoping I'm pronouncing his name correctly, probably not, said, quote, "We believe people should get the chance to enjoy and experience a night out without any impurities. No chemicals, no artificial colors, no electricity, no gas, no phone, and even no clothes if they wish to. The idea is to experience true liberation. We have worked very hard to design a space where everything patrons interact with is bare and naked. You know, the bamboo partitions, candlelight. It looks like the tables and chairs are going to be made from wood, going to be made from trees, which will be interesting to sit on. But yeah, nearly a 10,000 person waiting list for a restaurant that hasn't opened yet, that won't be opening for a month, possibly two. Gowns, changing rooms, and lockers will be provided for those who are stripping down. Obviously, no photography will be allowed for obvious reasons. That, and it looks like you're not going to, if you decide to go au naturel, it looks like they won't be allowing phones in. I'm not quite sure. That's where the wording gets kind of weird. But yeah, the Bunyadi in London, or that will be in London. You can dine naked with a bunch of people you've never seen before and probably never will. Yeah, it's, like I said, I don't make up news mostly because I'm not creative enough to make up stuff like this. Or this next story I'm about to share with you, which I can't believe these words about to come out of my mouth. The Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster performs first ever legal wedding ceremony. For those of you who missed it, I did say the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. They were in the news fairly recently when one of the followers, called a Pastafarian, demanded that, or said that because it is a legally recognized religion, that she has the right to wear any religious garb, such as, you know, a headdress or a burqa in her driver's license photo. The DMV said, all right, go ahead. And in her driver's license photo, she is wearing a colander on her head because she is a Pastafarian, somebody who is a member of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. And they performed their first ever legal wedding ceremony in New Zealand. The wedding was a pirate-themed ceremony. Toby Ricketts and Mariana Young live streamed their ceremony, which took place on a pirate ship in Akaroa. Yeah, first ever Pastafarian wedding ceremony. Now, the start of this religion was just as it was originally a social movement that promoted a lighthearted view of religion and opposed the teachings of intelligent design. You know, for all intents and purposes, it was a parody religion. It wasn't meant to be taken super seriously. It was meant to make fun of those religions that have orthodox branches that take themselves way too seriously. The Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster was meant to, you know, allow its members to have fun and, you know, kind of have a lighthearted view of the world and not be so serious and be such a stick in the mud. Which is incredibly insightful, I guess. I like the idea behind the church. It's just ridiculous sometimes. Yeah, it is formally recognized in New Zealand, Poland, and the Netherlands, which is why the issue came up. I believe the woman was actually in here in the States. She wanted to wear a colander on her head for her driver's license photo because she is a member because she's a Pastafarian. Now, again, not making up this next part. The pastor, or well, the Flying Spaghetti Monster equivalent of a pastor, the Ministeroni, Karen Martin, was approved by New Zealand's government in February and told the BBC that she has received several inquiries about Pastafarian weddings since being named the celebrant. Quote, "I've had people from Russia, from Germany, from Denmark, from all over contacting me and wanting me to marry them in the church because of our non-discriminatory philosophy." Yes, if you follow the Flying Spaghetti Monster, not only do you follow a Flying Spaghetti Monster, you are called a Pastafarian and you are wed by a Ministeroni, which is absolutely incredible. Again, can't make this stuff up because people aren't actually this creative. Like, there's no way you can make this stuff up. So, Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster officially has a legally recognized New Zealand wedding that it can boast about. Alright, and from weird to weird / WTF, we have a story coming from Whole Foods in Austin, Texas. There was a gay pastor, Jordan Brown, of the Church of Open Doors, who went to Whole Foods looking for a cake to be decorated with the words "Love Wins," a very popular phrase in the LGBTQ community. Okay, simple enough. You all know how easy it is for cake pipers to pipe out lettering, I guess. Assuming piping out is the term that's used. So he went to Whole Foods, ordered the cake, just said have, "Love Wins" in an arch on the top of the cake. And that's what he got. But he reported that what he got underneath it was the LGBTQ F word, which I'm not actually allowed to say on air, but I'm sure you all know what that word is. And part of where this story already starts to fall apart, if you've ever ordered a cake from a big store like Whole Foods if you're in Texas, or from Sam's Club or Costco if you're up here in Michigan, you always look at the cake because you're given to it at a desk that doesn't have a register. So you pay for it at the normal checkout register, so you have time to go around the rest of the store. You don't pay for it right as soon as you get it. So that gives you the chance to look at the cake, make sure that all of the colors are right, nothing got smeared, the words are all spelled correctly. There are more than a few stories of cake pipers, cake letter writers getting names wrong, spelling names hilariously wrong, and having to obviously redo it. But that's okay because you're given the choice to look at the cake. Jordan Brown, on the other hand, reportedly didn't take a look at his cake until he was at home, where he immediately pulled out his iPhone, filming vertically because nobody knows how to film with a smartphone, and showed the cake in its box still sealed. So from the video, it's pretty damning evidence that the cake decorator, this bakery employee at Whole Foods, decided to throw in an extra F word to the Love Wins motto. But as Whole Foods responded, the label that's shown in Brown's video is on the wrong side of the cake, or on the wrong end of the box, and CCTV footage from inside the store up at the register in clear view of the camera, where the label is put on the cake box and then scanned for purchase. The labels are put on the top front of the box next to the display window. In Jordan Brown's video, while it was sealed, it was on the wrong side of the camera. CCTV footage proves it. And Jordan hasn't, or Brown hasn't backed down from his accusations in any way, shape, or form, but Whole Foods did respond with an intent to take legal action against both Jordan Brown and his attorney. And according to this article on the Austin Eater, Whole Foods came out and said, here's what we know. First, our bakery team member wrote "Love Wins" at the top of the cake, which was visible to Mr. Brown through the clear portion of the packaging. That's exactly how the cake was packaged and sold at the store. Whole Foods Market has a strict policy that prohibits team members from accepting or designing bakery orders that include language or images that are offensive. Mr. Brown admits that he was in sole possession and control of the cake until he posted the video, which showed the UPC label on the bottom and side of the box. After reviewing our security footage of Mr. Brown, it's clear that the UPC label was in fact on top of the cake box, not on the side of the package. This is evident as the cashier scans the UPC code on top of the box, which you can see in the CCTV footage if you wanted to look this up. Whole Foods also said, we stand behind our bakery team member who is a part of the LGBTQ community, and we appreciate the team members and shoppers who recognize that this claim is completely false and directly contradicts Whole Foods Market's inclusive culture, which celebrates diversity. Signed, yours truly, Whole Foods Market. So, it's pretty overwhelmingly... How do I want to word this? It's pretty overwhelmingly discovered to be a hoax. It's all but officially deemed a hoax by Jordan Brown. But there is... Now, his video may have been damning evidence had the CCTV footage not been found and looked at to show that while the seal on Brown's cake box may not have been broken, showing that nobody could have gotten into it, the label that the cashier scanned was on the wrong side. And not only that, but the bakery team member was part of the LGBTQ community. Seems kind of weird to crucify your own community like that. It's like shooting yourself in the foot. You just wouldn't do it. So yeah, kind of a, another bizarre story that made sense at first, but when you really looked at what was actually happening, it was very obvious that what we were looking at wasn't actually real, and it was a hoax. Whole Foods is taking legal action, so the truth will come out, much to Jordan Brown's dismay. All right. Before we take our last break here, we're going to look at some sports. Now, obviously, it is baseball season with the basketball playoffs still going on. So we have what could potentially be our last Pistons update. They dropped yet again to the Cavaliers Friday night, 101-91, in a very Pistons-esque performance. They are currently getting absolutely schooled in the series, 3-0. Game 4 is tonight at 8:30 at the Palace of Auburn Hills. So hope maybe the Pistons can pull out a home game win to at least, extend the series. Now into baseball season. Starting off with the Tigers, we played the Cleveland Indians today and we lost 6-3. We dropped to 8-9 overall for the season. The next game is tomorrow night against the Athletics at Comerica Park, so go ahead and get your tickets now. That game has a 7:10 p.m. start. Eastern baseball, we somehow managed to beat Western Michigan 5-3 in 11 innings of play. Our next game is Wednesday against Notre Dame. University of Michigan baseball, they lost to Iowa 8-3, got absolutely crushed. Their next match is Friday the 29th against Michigan State at the Wilpont Complex in Ann Arbor, kicking off their 3-game series. Speaking of, Michigan State is currently leading Indiana 4-3, I believe it is. Their next game is Wednesday the 27th against Toledo in East Lansing. Then they will take on Michigan in a 3-game series. All right. So, Kelly Ripa is currently furious that co-host Michael Strahan is leaving the show to be on Good Morning America. Not furious enough for her face to move in any way, shape, or form, but still pretty mad. Jennifer Aniston has been announced as Time's Most Beautiful Woman of 2016. She narrowly beat out the runner-up, Justin Bieber. Peter Dinklage visited his newly made wax figure at Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, and after inspecting it, he stood on its shoulders to sign autographs. And finally, Hillary Clinton apparently carries a bottle of hot sauce in her purse everywhere she goes. I guess you never know when you might need to bludgeon a government hard drive. Those are my thoughts, not yours. You're listening to the 6-8 with DJ Eclectic here on WQBR Eagle Radio. Time to show them how we do it with some Montel Jordan. There you go. That was No by Pentatonics, cover of Meghan Trainor's song. Before that was 1999 by the now late artist Prince. It is currently 7:22 here on this Sunday, the 24th of April. You're listening to the 6-8 with DJ Eclectic here on WQBR Eagle Radio. My name is Chris. Thank you for tuning in and listening. Yeah, as I'm sure all of you know, the artist named Prince passed away this week. He was 57. He was found dead in Paisley Park. He had been complaining of flu-like symptoms. He had to cancel a couple shows. He did go out. He insisted on going out his last show, and despite the flu, he really pushed for going out for that last show. And in his Paisley Park estate early on Thursday, he was found. He was 57. He easily a very, very recognizable artist. I mean, you can recognize him from any song, any album. He had a song appear in Batman in '89 for crying out loud. Like, everybody knew who Prince was. Incredibly talented artist. And, the latest in a series of very, very unfortunate passings in 2016. But yeah, decided it was only fitting that I play probably easily one of his most energetic songs on the show. All right, moving along, we're going to head back across the pond, actually back to the UK, where Britain gave its people an interesting warning, interesting to say the least, about the US. And this is one of those stories where I couldn't believe what I was reading. I did have to go and double and triple check this. It's from the Washington Post. Britain issues warning for LGBT travelers visiting North Carolina and Mississippi. Now, this article gets specific. Other articles labeled the U.S. as a whole, and that's when I had to, double and triple check to make sure I was actually reading this article right. Yeah, the British Foreign Office released an advisory warning travelers to be aware of controversial laws in North Carolina and Mississippi. Obviously, as many of you know, with its newest LGBT-centered laws that may or may not be positive, depending on who exactly you ask. Yeah, the office said, quote, the U.S. is an extremely diverse society, and attitudes towards LGBT people differ hugely across the country. LGBT travelers may be affected by legislation passed recently in the states of North Carolina and Mississippi. Before traveling, please read our general travel advice for the LGBT community. And obviously in North Carolina, HB 2 limits LGBT protections and forces transgender people to use bathrooms corresponding only with the gender on their birth certificate. Mississippi's law, passed earlier this month, allows businesses to refuse services to gay couples based on religious objections. Now, it's not all negative. We have had some big names come out and say, that it's not okay. Bruce Springsteen, Ringo Starr, and Pearl Jam, just to name a few, have all canceled appearances in North Carolina as a show of opposition. Even PayPal said it's abandoning plans to expand into Charlotte in response to the legislation, which, if the bands and artists don't affect North Carolina, then a company like PayPal abandoning its plans to not just expand into Charlotte, but really to move its base of operations into North Carolina. That one's going to hurt. And even some cities and states, including San Fran, D.C., and the whole state of New York, have also banned non-essential government travel to North Carolina, which is something I didn't see an article on, and I didn't hear about it until reading this one. And now this isn't the first time a country has banned or given a warning about travel to the U.S. Earlier, Australian politicians called for a U.S. travel warning because of the quote-unquote gun culture in the U.S. Obviously, Australia, one of the biggest parties on the other side of the gun control fence. In this case, the British government advisory doesn't include a political message, but does refer prospective travelers looking for more information about the issues in the U.S. to the website of the Human Rights Campaign, a group that has voiced strong opposition to North Carolina's new legislation. So while it does seem like a general warning, a word of warning and safekeeping for everybody, there are definitely some political undertones, which I'm sure everybody could see coming. There's no way to avoid politics when we're talking about this issue. Among the advice for LGBT Brits traveling abroad, quote, exercise discretion in rural areas and avoid excessive physical shows of affection in public. Some hotels, the government also warns, especially in rural areas, won't accept bookings from same-sex couples. Check before you go. The Foreign Office included a link in this advisory to a world map produced by the International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans, and Intersex Association that highlights countries with legislation targeting LGBT people, which that may be a bloody mouthful to say, and I may never have heard of this association again before now. But it's interesting that they're now tracking all of the missteps in LGBT legislation. It doesn't have all legislation involving LGBT community people, either positive or negative. It says specifically legislation targeting those people. Among countries highlighted in red on the map, Turkmenistan, Pakistan, Nicaragua, as well as much of Northern Africa and the Middle East. And now, as far as Britain is concerned, we have 2 states on that map as well, which, for the 21st century, when we're talking about putting a black female abolitionist on one of the most widely circulated bills in the country, for us to have, for anywhere in this country to have legislation that puts us on a map of countries with legislation targeting a specific group of people. Not even, some people may swing this legislation this way to include it, or they may paint it in this picture. This is specifically targeting people. The fact that we have legislation anywhere that puts us on a map like that for this region in the 21st century is, I don't know, definitely one of the sadder things I've seen in a while. I don't know. I mean, much like the Tubman on the 20 debate, I'm not really 100% on either side of the fence, and it's not for any sort of discriminatory reasons. It's just that the wording and the definitions within the LGBTQ community and how people interpret them from outside the community aren't very clear, and so there's no way to have a clear opinion about any number of things. Like the definition of transgender, nobody can get that straight, and because that's really the core of North Carolina's legislation, like North Carolina deals with specifically transgender people, nobody can get the definition of that word straight enough for me to be able to have an opinion and be comfortable enough with that opinion, you know? I don't know, like I said, it's not for any, like I said, it's not for any discriminatory reasons. I'm not that guy. That's not how I operate. And those of you who know me know that for a fact. It's just there's so many things that are unclear about the community. There are enough unclear aspects of the community for me to kind of shy away from proclaiming an opinion either way. You know, whether for them or against them. You know, there's no way to form an opinion as an outsider, you know, as someone who is very obviously not part of that community. It's hard to form a valid opinion that really takes everything into account and is as thought out as an opinion in the 21st century in a first world country like America should be. But yeah, Britain officially warns its LGBT community to be careful of what you do in the U.S. And it again, despite not being part of the community, despite already being here and not really having to worry about this advisory warning, it's still, I hope this is a wake-up call, honestly, that other countries are now putting us on a map. They're painting us in red because of our numerous missteps and just, you know, mistakes that we've made that the people who make them are too proud to admit that they are mistakes. But I hope that, you know, something like this serves as a wake-up call. And if it doesn't, I hope that more countries do it. You know, that they start painting us in the same way that Britain is. Because we, at least North Carolina and Mississippi, really do deserve it for their legislation. Alright. So, all of you fans of AC/DC, like myself, may or may not have already heard that Brian Johnson is bowing out of the current AC/DC tour and really opened up about what he calls his darkest day of his career. Now, Brian Johnson is the lead singer of AC/DC. He came out and spoke about his hearing loss, his potential permanent hearing loss. Now, fans already knew that Axl Rose, the Guns N' Roses frontman, would be replacing Johnson on AC/DC's Rock or Bust World Tour, but it wasn't until Tuesday that Johnson detailed what led to his decision and what he called the darkest day of his professional life. Johnson has been with the band for 36 years, and he came out and said, and I quote, "On March 7th, after a series of examinations by leading physicians in the field of hearing loss, I was advised that if I continued to perform at large venues, I risk total deafness. While I was horrified at the reality of the news that day, I had for a time become aware that my partial hearing loss was beginning to interfere with my performance on stage." Johnson joined AC/DC in 1980 after the original singer Bon Scott died, and said as of late he had been having trouble hearing the guitars and other musicians on stage. He didn't seem bitter that he was being replaced. It definitely is a statement of overall acceptance. He said, "Our fans deserve my performance to be at the highest level, and if for any reason I can't deliver that level of performance, I will not disappoint our fans or embarrass the other members of AC/DC. I'm not a quitter, and I like to finish what I start, nevertheless. The doctors made it clear to me and my bandmates I had no choice but to stop performing on stage for the remaining shows and possibly beyond. He has been cleared to continue to record in studios, and he said he definitely intends to do that. This is mostly just affecting his live work. And he said also in his statement, for the moment, my entire focus is to continue medical treatment to improve my hearing. I'm hoping that in time my hearing will improve and allow me to return to live concert performances. AC/DC is expected to soon announce the rescheduling of 10 U.S. dates that will include Rose on the microphone instead of Johnson. So yeah, you fans of AC/DC who managed to have tickets to the U.S. shows will be seeing Axl Rose instead of Brian Johnson. And again, like I said, he doesn't seem bitter. And this article that's on CNN, so you can look it up and read it for yourself. Nothing in his statement reeks of bitterness or regret or anger in any way. It's just sad acceptance. He knows that if he continues, he'll go, he's risking going all the way deaf permanently. He obviously doesn't like the news, but he has accepted it, meaning that I'm sure his other bandmates have accepted it, and potentially it won't be as awkward when Axl Rose steps on the mic in his place. But yeah, so the tour is still going to continue, and Johnson did say that the doctors said he could continue in studio. So for the albums that AC/DC is planned in any studio time, it will still be Johnson's voice that you hear. It's just for world tours, because there is such a drastic difference between on-stage performances, live venues, and being able to be in a secluded, insulated studio with headphones on, with adjustable volume. He does have to bow out of the live performances for the best, and hopefully his medical treatment allows him to be on stage with the band that he's shown dedication to for 3.5 decades. And hopefully he'll be able to return on stage. Alright, got one last check of weather for you guys. Kind of a fairly mild enough month. Nothing ridiculously hot, nothing stupid cold. Rain has kind of been on and off. It's never been obnoxious. And today we hit a high of 65. We'll have a low of 36 tonight. Definitely did feel like it was peaking at mid to upper 70s, which was very nice for especially now that the semester is winding down. I saw a lot of people today starting to move out of the dorm, so it felt like it was mid to upper 70s. Nice weather. Tomorrow, though, we jump right into the rain. 70% chance of thunderstorms. We're looking at a high of 77 with a low of 47. Tuesday is mostly cloudy with about a 30% chance of rain, high of 56, low of 50. Wednesday, can't see any rain on the radar, high of 60, low of 38, mostly sunny that day. Thursday, we get back to rain with a 70% chance of showers, high of 58, low of 50. Friday is looking to be mostly sunny with a high of 64 and a low of 43. Saturday is going to be mostly cloudy with about a 40 or 50% chance of rain, high of 68, low of 51. And Sunday, we're looking at a 60% chance of showers all day, high of 69, low of 49. So not a bad way to end April, not a bad way to start May. I mean, I prefer if Sunday was sunnier, but, it's all looking to be 60s at the minimum for highs, which for spring in Michigan isn't atrocious by any means. Yeah, kind of a mixed bag this upcoming week as far as weather goes. Nothing out of the ordinary, which is definitely something you can't say very often living in Michigan and dealing with seasons that don't make any sense. Snow in April for no reason. But yeah, kind of a mixed bag. Hopefully next week is a little bit better, and by better I mean less rain. We need some of that sun to get over the lingering effects of winter, like the snow in April, like I said, for no reason. Okay, since this is my last show here, I wanted to kind of talk more about that. You know, this is considered a class, meaning I could if I begged my station manager hard enough, but I can't run this show year-round. And because of the nature of the show and, you know, having 11 to 13 songs every show, I can't have a program on Eagle Radio every fall and winter semester. So I've decided that the show's seasons will only run from January to April. So after the show, it is going to be off-season until after Christmas this year. As it is considered a class, I do have to register for it. You know, and so it's a credit hour that I have to balance with the rest of the classes that I need to take. But I will be returning next January and the January after that. And like I said, there is a Facebook page set up and a Twitter profile, both by the name DJ Eclectic. The show archive, which was previously on my own personal Vimeo channel, going by my name, will be moving over to the official DJ Eclectic channel, where I'll post every show from every season in a playlist so you can binge listen to the evolution of this show, getting to where we are today. And then on Facebook and Twitter, I will be posting interesting new songs that I discover, any new songs released, and any interesting news like 30-year-old high school basketball players or flying spaghetti monster weddings that would normally appear on this show. You know, so you can still get your DJ Eclectic fix. But for all of you guys who have listened to me ramble on in your ears for this season, I can't thank you enough. This right here, this is why I wanted to get into radio. It's why I'm glad that my time as a high school broadcaster turned me to a career of radio broadcasting instead of graphic design. I couldn't have pictured this going any better than it did this season. I seriously can't thank you all enough. So, to all my listeners, remember to take care of yourselves and each other. Have a good week. Have a good summer. Have a great rest of 2016. And to play me out, here's some Hey Ya by Outkast. Catch you on the flip side.